Okay, so we're back. Hilchos Melicha, it's been a couple of weeks, so we need to review a little bit Siman Ayin, the very beginning, Sif Aleph, and then go on to Sif Beis. In Siman Ayin, we're going to be reviewing some concepts that are familiar to us from Basar B'Cholav, perhaps Taaruvot as well. But some people learn Melicha before they learn Basar B'Cholav and Taaruvot. So they come across some of these concepts pretty much here. And that is salting various meat together. That's usually not going to be a problem, as we're going to see Sif Aleph. It can be a problem when you're salting kosher with non-kosher meat. So that is really the question, that we want to understand the mechanics of the salting process. We know how it works on a piece of meat, and one piece of meat, but how does it affect when we have several pieces of meat and chicken together? Does it affect fish because their makeup is different? Does it somehow, the blood coming out, of course, is usher, and flowing on top, will that be a problem? Will it be absorbed? Or since everything is being salted anyway, are they all protected and so forth? So this concept, even though the average person, I have to admit, does not run into such problems. Most people don't salt their own meat or chicken at home, but it's important to know because we did cover salty pieces of food like salty cheese next to meat that is very salty because it was salted to preserve. So there can be other situations other than melicha to take out the dam that something should be maluach. And maluach keroseach. We do know by now that melicha does have some power, albeit not the same power as bishul or even sli, depending on the situation. Nonetheless, it can be an issue. An issue can arise when things touch each other, and one of them or the two of them are salty. So the source of this halacha, or the first halacha, of salting a lot of meat together is in Chulin, where one of the Tanoim or Amoraim, I forget what it was, had some concern about doing it all together. He would do one at a time, one piece at a time. Did not want to just have the blood from one flow onto the other. But the maskana, it's understood that it's not a problem. You can be moileach, as the Mechaber says, it's not a problem, even though it's very possible that the one at the bottom will finish its plita, emitting its dam and seer, before the one above. We're not going to say that the ones in the bottom are going to reabsorb the dam from the top one. And the reason for that is the way we understand the Gemara and the way that most of the Rishonim learn is because even though most of the dam has come out, there's always seer coming out. So that's a very important nekuda to keep in mind, that yes, the dam will pretty much, we hold pretty much all of it will come out after a certain amount of time. But even after that, beyond that time, whatever it is, 80 minutes, an hour, there will still be seer. And if seer is coming out, that's good news. Good news, I wonder, was for the ones in the bottom who may still perhaps be getting blood from the ones in the top. And so long as there's seer coming out, I did the torid liflot, we say lo bola. That's the main idea. Or as long as the ones in the bottom are being maflit something, there will not be boleya. Mechaber adds, even though there may be some concern about those areas that we call cavities or gumois, some say that which is accumulated there, by the way, later on is only tzir anyway. But even in the very beginning, when it accumulates dam in the cavities, it eventually everything falls off. In other words, the Mechaber doesn't hold that you actually, like the Ramos says, if it has a base kibble, it's a big piece of meat and it's able to hold, you have to turn it over, to spill whatever accumulated of the mohel, the dam, and so forth. No, you don't have to worry about that. Eventually everything comes out, and by the time you're ready to rinse it off, there's still tzir coming out. So there's no need for that. Just the Ramos says, nohagin lehachmir. If the meat has a base kibble, doifen shleima, that mehapchin oiso, sheyozu vadam. In other words, you turn it over. Okay, fine. But other than that, there's no problem. And Mechaber says clearly you have gumais, it's not an issue. And basically, that's the main hesber of why we're not so concerned with salting a lot of pieces together. However, as we did mention, the second reason for it brought down in Tosfos, B'Shem Yesh Meforshim, was the dam actually is nivla. Dam will be absorbed in the bottom ones. But we don't have to be concerned about it, because the melach, eventually that is on the piece of meat at the bottom, will take out that which was absorbed. Well, that's important, because that could be a nafkamina, as the Meforshim explained. You could have a nafkamina between the two reasons. What's the nafkamina? Because once you hold that all the tzir is gone too, like after 24 hours, right? Then there's no tzir coming out from the bottom, and then if you have new pieces of meat coming down, in other words, the blood coming down, it may be boleh, and it won't be a way for it to come out. But if you hold like the second reason, that as long as you apply salt to it, you can somehow get it out, even new dam that became absorbed into it, that will be, of some sort of benefit. So that there will be somewhat of a nafkamina between these two explanations as how come we're not concerned about the bottom piece of meat. Either the toret polat, there's always tzir coming out, and don't worry about the dam coming down, and the tzir goes on for a while, up to 24 hours, according to some. Or even if it is absorbed, the melach will take out, in the same way it takes out the regular blood, the internal blood, it will also take out new blood that has come in, but not just any blood. I'm going to come back to it later with the dam ba'in that we spoke about early on in Hilchos Melicha. Here we're just talking about blood, internal blood that's coming from other pieces of, as opposed to... Yeah.
After 4 hours, it's still going down to do this?
Yeah, well, he didn't talk about time. Yeah, because remember, once we talk about time with salt does have a certain amount of koach that can last only so long.
Right.
Yeah, that we spoke about earlier too. But generally speaking, let's say after 3-4 hours, that salt for sure is still powerful enough, and anything that may have come in, and he says, yes, it does come in, but so what? The salt that's still sitting there will bring it back out. Not everybody agrees with that, but it's important to keep this in mind, because this will resurface in the following details, in the following halachas.
And it's those that it will reabsorb will take it out.
Right.
And those salt will not take it out, won't reabsorb.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. In other words, that they hold, the second svara holds kibolo kach poltoi. In the same way it does come in, it is absorbed, it can come back out with the same salt. The others don't hold of that. And therefore you need to come onto either the toret lemiflet lobola, you need to come onto the other concept that so long as it has something, some juice, some liquid coming out, it will not absorb. And that juice will go on for a while, so that's not going to be an issue. What's interesting here, we have a shach and we have taz, and they elaborate sometimes on the din, and they ask questions, they sometimes differ. Halacha lemaaseh, how do we go? Who do we hold? Like, is there a difference between Hefzer and Ruh? In other words, it's important to learn the shach and taz, because as much as the mechaber is pretty much giving us over the halacha, there's all kinds of ramifications that are not in the mechaber. That is why there is a Ramah, that is why there is all the Nasikanim. So in Yore Deah, and even in Orach Chaim, it's important to learn a little bit what's going on. The Ber Heitev, by the way, for those who are not familiar with him, does an excellent job in summarizing what the Shach and Taz say. If you don't have the time to go through the whole thing, sometimes they're long. Ber Heitev does a nice job in summarizing the Shach and Taz. But then you have also other meforshim that sometimes, the Kib'Eger, the Gra, the Pri Chodosh, that are very valuable as well. Besides the meforshim on the Tur, the Prisha. So anyway, so the Taz over here writes very interesting, that in his opinion, the Ramah holds like the second reason in Tosfos, that if blood comes in, it can come out later on through the salt. He wants to prove that from a seif that we will learn later on, seif vav. And over there, the seif vav, it talks about a piece of meat that has already been salted and washed. It just, by mistake, it fell into a bunch of tzir and sat there for a little bit. And that could be a problem. The tzir, which is mixed with dam, it will reabsorb. If it's sitting, tzir is roiseach. Remember, it's not just water. Just plain water, would need perhaps kavush over 24 hours to be a problem. But tzir is much more roteach and does not need the full 24 hours to make the piece of meat that's at least the portion that's in the tzir become affected by what's in there. So there in Sif Vov, the Ramah says, but don't worry, if in case it did fall in, you can always take out whatever was absorbed through salting the piece of meat again. If you really have to. It's possible. Not that that's not something that necessarily you should do or you can do, but I think he says that b'mokum tzorech, if I recall correctly. Yeah, obviously, something like that. Yeah. צורך הפסד גודל. יש להעתיק גם בזה, כל זמן פליט הסירוי, אין לתוך י"בי שויס, 12 hours, במדיח it, and then salt it again. Alright, anyway, he talks about it towards the end of the Siman. So the Taz says, you see, that the Ramah maybe is learning like the second shot in Tosis, but the Shach says, no. Not necessarily. It's very likely that the Ramah holds like everyone else, pretty much that the main reason why you can salt so many pieces of meat is because I did the Torah the Miflet, lo bola. That's the main reason. Over there he says you can do that. That's different because over there it fell into a kli, she'eno menukav. It's a kli that has no holes. It's sitting in it. You can't apply the Hezber, the explanation of I did the Torah Miflet lo bola. Over there you can't use that. It can't. It's sitting in it. So over there you have to, like you said, behefsid. And behefsid, all right, come on to the other explanation that perhaps it is possible to use that method, that approach. In some situations that may work. Not everybody agrees with it, that that's possible, but the Ramah said, the Mokam hefsid gadol, you could do that. It doesn't mean that that's the pshat over here. Here he says, just like the Mechaber says, like the main pshat, that the main reason why you can salt a lot of pieces of meat is because I did the Torah Miflet lo bola.
That piece of meat that just got seared?
Yeah. Which one? The one over there later on? Which one are we talking about? The what?
About the hefsid.
Yeah.
Is it a salted piece or a piece of the...
Right now it's unsalted. No. In other words, it was already salted, but right now it doesn't have any salt on it, necessarily.
Washed off.
He says, kol shekain. In that Ramah, there's a kol shekain. If a piece of meat was not even salted yet, over there he later on says that would be an easier one. Because when it brings out its blood, it will for sure bring out the rest. So here we're talking about it has already been salted. That's a chiddush. But you can still do it. But it's interesting that the Taz also brings down that supposedly, if all the tzir would come out, it would be a problem, right? According to the first explanation. But as we explained, I think the Nekudas Kesef says on this that the tzir goes on even a long time after the dam is finished. So we don't have to worry about that. All right. That was the first portion of Sif Aleph. Mechaber just says that there's no difference between what kind of meat, Basar and Basar, Basar Shorim, Basar Gdoim, Utloim, with goats, sheep, lamb, in other words, and even with chicken. Don't think that because they're so different, less dam, more dam, their makeup is different. Meat is meat, chicken, even though chicken is chicken, still, we don't say, oh, they're going to be done. Those chickens are going to be done giving out all their blood before that bull's meat. It's still going strong. No. He says, we don't worry about it. And nobody seems to say anything about that. All right. Aval Basarim Dogim, that was the next part of Sif Aleph. But if you have meat with fish, which it shouldn't be done, and obviously you don't want to put meat together, even though you're not cooking them, it could be a problem. Basarim Dogim, Asur Limloch, he says. Why? Because the Dogim Poltim Kol Tzirim Kodim Shliflot Oifes Dama. So he says very simple. The main reason for it is because even though fish apparently have something that is like blood, they will be done giving out their blood their tzir, koidem sheiflot ha'ofis damoy. That's the only thing the Mechaber says. There's other explanations behind it, but the Mechaber basically says there is something there, but it's going to come out very quickly, much too soon, and therefore, if you happen to have had them together, it will be a problem. Therefore, im ovaru molchan yachad ha'ofot mutarim, the chicken will be fine. Aval hadagim tzarich litol mehem k'dei klipa, but from the fish you have to remove a klipa. All right. So far, what do we see? That the Mechaber pretty much holds that fish are different in their makeup. It's actually also to do it, simply because who's going to suffer here? The fish. The fish is going to be a problem here, not the chicken. Why? Because the chicken has a lot going, a lot coming out. It will not absorb anything coming out of the fish. Whereas the fish, it will be done before you know it with whatever it has, and it will absorb. It will actually absorb the dam. Okay. Does that mean even if it has scales? No. Mechaber says, "Im lo nitlu kaskasehem," you're in luck. You have some luck. The fact that the scales are there, he doesn't tell us why from here. You have to go to the tour and basically you have to look at the original halacha. What difference does the scales make? Or the shachin tas. But just the Mechaber alone, he says just that if you had the scales there, mutorim. Now, which balabasta would do that? Put fish next to chicken. I don't think anyone. So where could this come up? This could come up in a market of sorts, a Jewish market, of course, because you're not gonna go buy. You may buy fish from a goy, but you're not going to buy chicken from a goy.
But he's not going to anyway.
He's not going to, yeah. So this could happen maybe in a marketplace where somebody sells both. I've seen places that they have both fish, a separate corner, which it should be, and chicken and meat in a separate corner. But maybe he was running out of place. Huh?
Why does it?
To preserve it, to give it a certain taste. People salt fish, I guess, I don't know, because of the way they want to prepare it. Yeah.
How about to preserve it?
I think certain fish like cod, it's done pretty much. It's a very dry fish, and sometimes they salt it, or I'm not sure which fish they do it to, but I know some fish they tend to salt it. I don't know for how long. Yeah. So you don't want to do them together, and I guess sometimes it could happen that they just got salted together. Okay, so far the Mechaber only talks about the issue concerning the dam, obviously. He didn't touch on the problem of sakana. We know from Yore Deah later on that there's a problem of cooking the two, not eating the two together necessarily, but you should not cook, you should not eat the two together. We always drink some bromfen, right? After you had some fish on Shabbos, have some challah, you have something before that, before you go to the... Have you ever heard of Maim Emtsoim? Besides Maim Rishonim, washing Nagelwasser, or not Nagelwasser, but depending why you're washing your hands for. But washing your hands for bread in the beginning of the meal. Then you have Maim Achronim at the end of the meal. What's Maim Emtsoim? In the middle of the meal. Who has in the middle of the meal except for on Pesach where you have, before the karpas? Actually, that's the first one because the Netilas Yadayim, the real one, comes later. So why would you have in the middle? So in the middle is because of that, because if you're eating with your hands and you touch the fish and it's greasy, you want to wash your hands from the fish, from that grease, before you handle the chicken. So that's called Mayim and important, yeah. Now, meat and fish, or chicken and meat, can lead to sakana. We've mentioned it several times, Chamira sakanto mi isura, something that is also because of sakana, stricter than Isser. Well, let's take a look at the following example. I don't know if a piece of treif meat fell into the soup. There's nothing but ain. It's being cooked up. Well, you could say, well, let's give it to the kafela. You can say, depending on if that's possible, you can say batal b'shishim, and you can say nothing because it's a suffix. It's a complete suffix. Right? Did it fall in or not? I don't know. I never saw. Somebody told me it fell in.
It was a mafik.
Huh? That he thinks, that he thinks
Just
maybe
saying,
something fell in.
If someone told you something,
No, it's not a real suffix, yeah.
It's not a suffix.
Exactly, but I'm
so
saying...
it was a suffix the rise in the chumrah.
Right, if it's a derais, it's a suffix derais to the chumrah. Yeah.
And it would be a suffix
Right,
derais.
and sometimes it's a suffix
It's not a
derais.
suffix.
Right. I'm just saying I'm calling it a suffix, but al halacha, you're right. It's not a real suffix. But
I find it always very stretched.
yeah, but you know what I mean here. There's a suffix, if it happens, you say, well, it's not really a shaila because, like Elon said, it's not a real suffix. And let's say it's a real suffix. It could be a suffix derais. It could be a suffix derabbanan. Let's say we know it's small. Let's say it's bottle. Okay, it's bottle. Fine, it's not an issue. What if somebody tells you, you know what? I was just in the kitchen. The caterer wasn't there. The mashgiach wasn't there, and somebody was videotaping the whole thing. Now you know what I mean. You know where I'm leading to. Yeah. Well, there's no video, and I have a feeling that mistake, some rat poison fell into the big pot. I'm not sure about it. Will you eat from it?
Depending on where it is.
No, of course not, because it's a sakana. Why take a chance? That's the point. The Chachamim said when it comes to sakana, you don't take a chance. We're stricter than it is with an issa. With an issa, we can apply all kinds of a term, bitul. If bitul shaykh is shaykh, but with sakana. So with meat and chicken and meat and fish, there is a sakana. It's a beferish halacha. So that's not addressed here in the Mechaber Ramah, because that's not the concern here. The concern is the dam. But why shouldn't it be the concern? Because it's only melicha. In other words, when dealing with melicha, it's not a concern. If one absorbed a little bit of the other, you may cook it. You're eventually going to cook it anyway. Each one. No. Even if you cook each one separately, by the way, not together, right? Still, the amount of may have been absorbed is minute enough not to constitute a problem.
Quantity, or is it because does not have the power to usher with?
No.
The reason I'm is we said that the health issue, then the kashrus, which you brought to the Olympic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that means if I'm dealing in the same situation that was suffix was invented, if I'm dealing in the same situation, same circumstance, if it's an issue of health, I'm going to be far more strict than if it's
Yes.
So if I'm dealing in the same situation, namely salting, then the issue of health, applying this principle, would be far more strict issue of kashrus. So if I can't salt fish and meat together because it's absorbed with respect to kashrus, that we said?
Yes.
Then since when it comes to health I'm far more strict, then the health issue of salting them together I should be even more concerned. So in other words, even in a situation where Lagabe kashrus I would permit it. When it comes to health, I should still forbid it.
But
we're seeing here the exact opposite.
Yes, because we're going to see the difference between the flesh of fish versus the flesh of chicken.
So what I'm saying, we might see that. But what I'm saying is, it can't be on the amount of absorption. If the volume of absorption
not only
is what permits it, if the volume of absorption is what permits a health issue, then at kama I should permit it issue because by health I'm more strict than kama. So it must be something else. I think that's what we learned before Pesach, that the salt does not have the koyach to.
But it's not only that. Even if it does have the koyach, that the most we're going to see it's a klipa in the fish, except for the Ramah who's machmed because we're not bekin in kochosh and shaman. So it could aser when it asers, it asers kedei klipa.
That's the gabe kashrus.
That's the gabe kashrus, and only the gabe the fish, not the gabe the chicken.
By health, I'm going to be more strict. That's what we say. This is the principle. By health, we're a little stricter than by kashrus.
So what we say is, even though by health we're more concerned, the tam or the tzir that is absorbed through the process called melicha does not pose a danger.
That's the point. It's not the quantity, it's not the volume. If it was a question of volume, then by kashrus I should even be more lenient than by
maybe I didn't follow you well. One more time. It's not.
If it's a question of how much, the volume that is absorbed,
yes,
then by kashrus should be more lenient than by health, and a quantity.
I am. I'm also lenient by kashrus.
And a quantity that will not aser legabe health should also not aser if you could klipa legabe kashrus.
Why not?
The way kashrus I'm being more lenient than by health. So a volume that doesn't even asr legabe health, at kama v'kama shouldn't asr legabe kashrus. Being more lenient. But if you're saying that
what you're saying now.
salting or tzir doesn't have the koyach to asr legabe health, so I can't conclude from that legabe kashrus. It's just something that salting doesn't accomplish. It's not a question of being more lenient or more strict. It's simply the salting does not affect the fish in a way that the.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, but we haven't gotten yet to a very important point, is that there is an actual difference between what is being absorbed into a fish versus what is being absorbed into a chicken. The type of penetration is different between what goes into a fish, which is dam, and it penetrates much more than the actual penetration or ability to penetrate into meat or chicken. It's not the same. But you have it's an excellent point what you're saying. But it's just the facts are that they're different.
So Lagabe the chicken, it won't ascerate one way or the other.
Exactly.
Lagabe the fish, it doesn't ascerate Lagabe health. So at Kama B'Kama, it doesn't ascerate Lagabe kashrus. It would ascerate Lagabe kashrus for sure. Lagabe health.
Yeah, we'll get.
Unless you say that salting doesn't ascerate Lagabe, doesn't have that.
We'll, as soon as we get into that, we'll review this point. Yeah.
Both, if I understand, both the meat, fish, and salt at this point.
At this point, yes.
So then why put the sakana and how much? Why are we saying it's not bolay? But there's not a sakana issue.
It was the amount that.
Since
yes.
then it can't absorb because it has a barrier.
Right.
Therefore, there's no sakana.
It's hard.
No. I think he's actually doing. You're explaining it better than I did, and in other words, and it makes more sense the way you put it. If I understood you right, the ma'aseh should not make a difference whether it's the chicken or the fish. Let's forget about the chicken for a moment. We're only concerned about the fish. Okay. So somehow the chicken is immune somehow, but the fish we will learn is not so easily immune, especially without scales. It can absorb up to a kedei klipa, according to some opinions.
According to the mechaber, the Ramah needs 6.
It may need. So, kashrus-wise, it poses a problem, and like Ilan said before, health-wise, it should also pose a problem. Why not?
Unless salting doesn't accomplish that health problem, and which seems to be, at least some opinion, what prevents it from problem, is that salting simply doesn't establish a relationship between the fish in such a manner, it would be because it's only taste. It's not really.
So what you're saying is not just the volume. It's not really the volume.
No.
It could be. It's just the process. The way it is being absorbed. It's really not. Well, so maybe a combination of it. Yeah. Is that what you're trying to say?
Wait a minute. If you're doing the volume,
right.
then you would say, like you said before, the rat poison.
Right.
Doesn't matter against it. You're not,
Right.
So it can't be. If you've got a sakana issue,
Right.
you establish that as the problem.
Right.
So it has,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Well, the way the Meforshim explain is that the process, I guess we can use the word process, of Melicha does not really pose a sakana. In other words, because what is being transferred through Melicha is only tam. And the tam, even though by Isur tam is an issue, by sakana it's not an Isur. It's not an issue. Is that okay? Is that better maybe? I think that's...
Ultimately, you can go on vice versa.
And vice versa. Very good. Ultimately, you can cook. That's correct. Meat in a pot that was used to cook fish. Because it's going to be not by not, and it's for sure not going to be a strong tam. So, unless there's some Persian dish, just came in, so I have to talk about meat and fish. I don't believe them, because everybody does. No community will do that. The reason I say that is because with cream cheese and lax, the Ashkenazim have no problem with it. And some Sephardim, it could be a problem. As we pointed out in Basar B'Chalav, it really shouldn't have been a problem. The main source, I think, of the whole Isser or Minhag, I think, comes from cooking two together. Milk and fish being cooked together would also be perhaps a health problem. But eating the two together, it's really unheard of. But some continue with that minhag. Unless, of course, it's butter. I think with butter and with other certain items, they're not as strict. Yeah, but that we don't really have the source for. But with fish and meat, and that's really the concern over here. Okay, so that's very good. That means that we brought this out, that it's apparently the process of what's involved that does not really pose a problem. All it does, it brings out the tzir or the tam, and therefore it's not also by itself. So according to the Mechaber, im ovar molchan yachad, we said that the chicken would be mutter, but the fish we would need to take out a klipa unless they still had the scales on them. That's all the Mechaber says. The Ramah says, yesh oisim kol adagim im einan shishim keneged oifes. Now, if you just learn this Ramah without learning the next seif, it's a little bit misleading, because you're in for a big surprise. It appears to be from this Ramah that the Ramah is more machmer, and you will soon see a tremendous kula in the Ramah later on. But anyway, so far, this is what the Ramah says, that we are machmer to require shishim keneged oifes. Why? Because when it comes to melicha, we are meshar, because we're not bekeen between kochush and shaman. And since we're makbid by shaman, shaman requires 6 shishim, so we're not such bekeen between the two. But he adds dafka the leismu kaskasim, of course, as long as there's no scales. And now he explains why. Why is it so? Why are we so makbid on the fish? So he adds the rofu karmaihu, which is the lashon of the Gemara, that their skin is really soft. Ufoltu miyad. Now he wants to say that even though it's true, you could claim that they also are poilet seer, but since it's rofu karmaihu, the skin is very, very soft, they will be poilet seer miyad. And therefore, you won't have the advantage that you have with meat and chicken, of there's continuous sear coming out. All of it will come out quickly, within a few minutes, and you'll still have the blood coming out and being absorbed into the fish. But once you have kaskasim mutorim, why? And that's interesting. What the Ramah says, what does the kaskasim do for the fish? They ain't polti miyad, which is what the Taz is going to tell us too. That what this kaskasim does is not a barrier necessarily from absorbing blood, but it's a barrier for the fish, for the tzir in the fish to come out slower. Why? Then it will resemble more like 2 pieces of meat. So once you have the kaskasim, you have again the advantage that we have with regular pieces of meat, that it will not be moleah. Wow, that's very nice to know. So if the fish is salted, just make sure, check it out if it has the scales or not. So far we do know that the kaskasim will make a difference from the mechaber too. Mechaber just says that there's no klipa required. Here, the kaskasim seem to make a world of a difference, because we're talking about shishim. You may need shishim otherwise. That's very interesting that the kaskasim should help so much. So the Ramah says it's not because it's a barrier, or like Mechaber is really following the Tur in a sense. What does the Tur say about kaskasim? If you have kaskasim, it acts in place of the klipa. Great. So it's a barrier for the blood. It absorbs the. So by the way, there's a question brought down in the poskim. What happened if you cook that fish with its kaskasim? With the blood that was absorbed, is the blood absorbed into the kaskasim or not? Do you need shishim keneged the kaskasim now? If you hold that the kaskasim act instead of a klipa, that means they've absorbed the blood. You may need shishim keneged the kaskasim. Would somebody cook the? Huh? The blood that was absorbed into the fish from the chicken. Yeah. Why would somebody cook a fish with its scales? But anyway, it could happen.
Does it make a difference?
Yeah.
You refill the fish.
Okay.
We put it back into the skin, back in the fish skin.
One more time, they would ground it up.
With the way they used to make fish.
Right. In the old days, yeah. Right.
They take out the make of the fish.
Right.
They grind whatever.
Right.
And then they would look back into the skin and cook it that way.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. But it was without the scales.
It was without the scales.
It was without the scales. Sure.
Some examples right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
in Persia, they used to filter fish without the scales.
They don't know what gefilte fish is.
Because he was such an expert. They used to do it without the scales. They thought they were Persian.
Yeah.
Soft brush.
Yeah. All right, so anyway, so that was the issue here with the fish. So far, what do we see? That the Ramah just says that, listen, if you have the kaskasim, he says differently than what we know from the Tur at least, that it's not such a barrier for the blood, it's a barrier for the tzir coming out of the fish. That will means it will slow the process of tzir to come out. Then you're saved because then they're more or less equal. Blood is coming into the fish perhaps, but it's going to be coming out. In other words, it won't be letting it in because it's...
As long as it's emitting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, there is a question here about on the Ramah. The Ramah later on in Siman, we saw it in Taaruvot in Kuf Hey. It's mashma that the behefsim meruba you can be meko by kochosh. When we know something is really kochosh, that it's not also more than a klip. Why doesn't he mention it over here? You know, the Shach told us several times that dam is considered kochosh. Why wouldn't he mention it here? He should have said, but in Hefsim Meruba we can be meko here too. If you look at the Taz in Taaruvot, and I think it's in the same Siman over there, he says that the reason why we're mafresh sometimes by dam, that it's mefapeh, is because dam sometimes contains fats, seer and shuman, and it could be because of that he's not he's not mentioning it over here to be meko behefsim meruba, as opposed to other isum that may be kochush, where he would say, okay, this is really kochush anyway. But dam, we did see it in Taaruvot, can contain tzir, shuman, and other ingredients, and maybe because of that it could be mefapeh. Anyway, the Rosh is also of the opinion that the kaskasim act as a barrier here to prevent the plita from coming out quickly. And that's what's mutter. All right, Sif Beis. Bamed dvorim amurim. When was all this said about Basar and Dogim? Keshemolach shneim yachad, when you salted the two together. Osha of meliach v'dak tofel. Now we're getting into the real meat of this halachas. If you recall from Basar b'cholav, one is maluach and one is tofel. Tofel with a tof versus the word tofel with a tes. Tofel, tof, pelamed means unsalted, plain. Unless there's a better translation for it here. Tofel. There's maluach and there's unmaluach called tofel. Tofel with a tes means it's secondary. You know, in Hilchas Brachas, you want to sometimes know what bracha should I make on a soup that has croutons. You have the ikar. You want to know what the ikar is and what the tofel is. The croutons.
For some people.
For some people. Right? You want to know sometimes what is the ikar and what is the tofel. You're not going to make a bracha on the two. You're having cereal. Are you going to make a bracha on the milk and on the Cheerios? The Cheerios is the ikar and the milk is the tofel. You don't make two separate brachas, so especially when they're mixed. But sometimes you do make separate brachas. When you have goulash with potatoes, you're going to make on shahakol, and you're going to make on adama. You know, they're two separate things, even though they're mixed together. And sometimes, even if one is tofel, if the tofel is a mezoinus, it doesn't really become a tofel. Because mezoinus is always going to be important. Except perhaps in the croutons, you know, a couple of croutons here and there. It may not be substantial enough. But yeah, but if you have mezoinus, in a salad or something, it may be.
The lasagna example.
Yeah. It's Persian lasagna.
Yeah, but actually, what is an example? It's an example for what?
For the bracha of mezoinus. Yeah.
What? For mezoinus.
All right. So anyway, so bamed var mamurik shemolach shneim yachad. So you have both salted. Osha of meliach, or that the chicken is salted. V'dag tofel, and the fish is the one that's unsalted. Avalim dag meliach. If the fish is the one that's salty, the off tofel, the nostum zet, they're both next to each other, or ze'algav, they're one on top of the other, af dagi mutarim below klipa, and then even the fish will be mutar without a klipa.
Fish is salty.
Right. So what's the reason here? So there's several explanations brought down here from the Rashba. Apparently the Rashba has two. The Taz chose one here, and it appears to be the second one. Even though the fish is salty, the salty fish does not have koach to be mafre the dam of the chicken. It just doesn't have that koach. Pri Megadim says that the main reason appears like the first hesber of the Rashba, not this, even though the Taz is quoting what appears to be the second explanation, that it's just not powerful enough. Salty fish does just not have koach to take out blood. Not that it's not powerful. Remember, salt is powerful, but if the fish is salty to take out blood from the chicken, not ad kedei kach. As opposed to the chicken being salty and emitting blood, and the fish just absorbing it. But
do we ever say that if one emit blood? So if I have two, one is salted and the other is said that the unsalted one is going to salted chicken?
well, they're touching each other.
I'm just asking. No,
Yeah.
because what's the,
Well,
why
the
would
salt,
the
the
salt?
salt.
So if it depends on the koach of the salt,
Yeah.
why would the salt?
If there's enough salt, it all depends on if the. Good question. It really depends on if you hold. What's roteach over here? Is the meat roteach, or is it just the sear that's coming out that's roteach, or both of them? So something which we're going to see it a little bit later, something which is fully being salted, like dera, was to take out its blood. We say that even the piece of meat is roteach, not just the sear that comes out of it. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is. Therefore, by touching, that's why it poses a problem when things touch each other.
That's why a chicken with a fish now roteach.
No. So that's what we want to know over here. What happens? So we know what happens when the chicken is roteach and the blood comes out and is simply absorbed into the fish, even though the fish was not meluach, because apparently this blood that's coming out is roteach already sufficiently through the salt process to be absorbed into the fish. But for the other way around, for it to happen to take out from the fish, the salty fish, to take out the blood, doesn't have the koach to do that.
I thought that was
Right.
dependent to that.
Yeah.
When the chicken is being salted, it releases blood. The release of the blood goes very fast.
Right.
So by the time that the
In other words, had it still been releasing, then it would act as a
Maybe.
barrier to
For the
stop
fish.
for the fish.
But vice versa as well. There's no blood left in the fish. Because the chicken is releasing blood right now. It's much slower as releasing blood. And while the fish is at fast, so at the time that the fish is releasing blood, so is it. So as long
Okay.
as the chicken is releasing blood, it's not going to absorb blood for anyone. From another chicken, from a fish, from whatever.
Right, the
As
chicken
long as
will
it's
not.
releasing.
The chicken will not.
And by the time the chicken stops releasing, the fish will already cease to release the blood a long time ago.
Yes.
Because it releases fast.
Okay.
So we'll never have a situation where
Where?
the chicken finishes releasing blood and the fish is still releasing blood that it could absorb.
Right.
So that was going to be my question.
The chicken doesn't have a problem.
Once that's understood,
Right.
Once that's understood, the question that we're going to have is now a problem. Namely, what if the chicken was salted first, and the salting process is already almost or complete, and now comes the fish being salted, and the fish is in fact releasing blood at a point in time in which the chicken is not releasing? Would the chicken still be protected against the blood being released by the fish? Or in this case, would it be a case like chicken?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah. Remind me if we don't, because we
Sure.
we will actually talk a little bit more in depth as to what exactly is coming out of this fish. And does it at all, at any time, pose a problem to the
Do
chicken?
we wonder or worry at all if you had time for all of it?
Right.
A small amount of meat or chicken. And stop before the chicken because there's just so much work.
It appears to be that the chicken or meat emits always a certain amount of tear, much longer, considerable amount of time longer than the fish does. Before you know it, the fish is over.
You have a massive amount of fish and all the small meat.
Yeah.
Well,
Just in theory, but his question.
yeah. Yeah.
But I'm wondering, if you have a lot of fish, will that lead to a lot of blood being in a short period? Or will a large amount of fish also cause it over a longer period of time?
No. It's all the same because we're assuming it's all being drained, right? Of course, it's not sitting in it.
Right.
So therefore, as long as you put it there at the same amount of time, you can put 100 fish, and it's going to take within 5 minutes. It's going
be
to
much larger volume of blood, released just
right,
as fast.
just as fast. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. So the volume of
The fish will not matter in that. Yeah. All right. So anyway, the Taz is the one that says that the fish or the salty fish does not have the koach to be mechamem, to heat up the chicken in order to bring out, to be mafred the dam. Primigodem I saw says that the ikar here is really the reason that the first hesber in the Rashba, that the fish does succeed in warming up the chicken a little bit to just draw out a little bit of dam, but it's so minute or it's so little that dam simply cannot be absorbed into the fish. It doesn't it does it does go so far as taking out some blood, but it does, that little bit of blood does not pose a problem. Why? Because especially since that fish has sear anyway. It's sear that's coming out, so the little bit of blood against the sear that's coming out will not pose a problem. That's the main reason. Okay, so let's see now just a shach. A shach I think is worth looking into here. Shach asks here a question on the Shulchan Aruch. Shach says over here that why did the Shulchan Aruch, why did the Mechaber allow, if in this particular case, when the chicken is unsalted and the fish is salted, he allowed it, no problem, whereas later on in Halacha Gimel, he brings down a Yesh Omrim, which I think is the Ran, eventually we'll get to that there is an opinion that holds that when the two are touching, then on the Makom HaMaga, it could be a problem. In other words, over there we're talking about something which is tomeh, treif, or something which is kosher, that if they're touching, that it could be that where the kosher salted one touched the tomeh one, it could be a problem. So over there he mentions it. Why not mention it here too? That yesh oimrim, that in that particular spot where they touch, it could be a problem. So he gives two tirutzim, the shach. Over there he says, in Sif Gimel we're talking about either fish or meat, but we're talking about a dover tomeh, a basar that's, not kosher. Here we're talking about blood coming out of a chicken. So that's a very different kind of a situation. Does the blood of the chicken affect the fish? Can this bring it out? Can this fish bring out the dam of the chicken and go into the fish? That's a very different situation compared to over there, where you actually have something tomeh touching something kosher, something treif, touching something kosher, where there are opinions that you have to be machmir. So here the scenario is very different. Or if you hold like the other Hezbollah in the Rashba, that just a little bit of blood comes out, but not so much, because of the process, because of the way the salted fish does, take out. It takes out a little, but not a lot. So that's why here the Mechaber doesn't feel a need to bring on the Yesh Oisrim or the other opinion, because it doesn't really apply as much as when you have treif and kosher meat. Okay. Mechaber says that that it's all completely the dogim amutorim beloy klipa, right? If the fish were the ones that were salted. Ramah says, just to finish up the Ramah here, the same is true if the fish were on top of the chicken, as opposed to the chicken on top of the fish. Even if they're all salted together, but the fish were on top. The Shach on this, by the way, says it's also kedei klipa, but the Ramah says it's no problem if the fish were the ones on top. Why? The dam eino mefapeh milemato lemala. V'lo gora mechaticha amunachas betzir dema shelemala min hatzir shori. Remember the case where there's a piece sitting on tzir? What's above the tzir is not going to be a problem. It's only what's in the tzir, sitting in the brine. So this is not any worse. If the fish are the ones, it's all salted, but the fish are on top, that's not going to be a problem even if everything is salted. The same thing if they're not next to each other. It says the only time they came together is after the chickens were completely salted. Okay, so an hour went by. Now you put the salted chicken close to the fish. Afa dogim utorim, afa pisha shnei meluchim, because it's already past the hour or whatever, half an hour, whatever, that it was mostly emitting the blood. So the little bit that's left now is not going to pose a problem. So the Ramah is makel on that too. Okay. V'im nimlechu dagim bekli shemolchu basar adogim. V'im nimlechu dogim bekli shemolchu basar adogim utorim. If you went ahead and salted fish in a kli that you salt meat, dogim are mutter. The eina dogim boilim madam shebekli. They melicha lakelim. We saw that several times. There's no melicha to take out tam from kelim. So even though this vessel is always used to salt the meat and it has balu blias of dam, you are salting the fish in there, no problem also. The dagi will not absorb the dam that is absorbed in the kelim. Now comes the chidush.
Because you're allowed to use pot.
Yeah.
So why would there be any working meat?
No, now you want to salt meat, fish in a pot that you salted meat and it has blias of meat.
Yes.
Blias, yeah. So
my question, if you're allowed to salt meat in this part, in the case where you're salting meat with the fish.
right.
So that
You're right. We said that before. He's just good point. Since you can do meat again, because of the same reason. Melicha lekelim, he says. So in other words, he's basically restating that concept.
It's not something that applies specifically to fish.
No.
Then it's applicable to liver as well. That if they salt the liver in that pot.
In the pot, no problem. Yeah. Like Ilan said, it wouldn't make a difference. Ultimately, it's mutter for this, it's mutter for that. Melicha lekelim. But here comes the chidush. Yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. Before you roast the liver, we can eventually learn it. The minhag is to put a little bit of salt, and not as much as you put for chicken or meat, but just a little bit. Here comes the chiddush. V'hoda amrinu di madak tofer, that if the fish is not salted, v'oifus meluchim, it's a surim. Haino dafka shadag polat kvar domoi. That's only if the fish had already released all its dam, the hudach, and it was rinsed. If you just grab the fish now that was never salted yet, mutar. It's going to be mutar. The agav the yiflot dam the day when it is maflit its own dam, yiflot gam kin adam sheboleam mina oifos. It will also take out any dam that may come in from the oifos. Just like a chaticha shenoflo letzir later on, koydem melicha, chaticha that fell into tzir before melicha. The mutar mihai tamam, because once you salt it, it will take out its own. It will take out whatever it got from someone else. And we'll talk about that, of course, next. When we say melicha, how much melicha constitutes melicha kereteach? So anyway, so what we see here so far is a big chiddush. If you have fish that was never poilet its dam, the Ramos says, once you put it there, no problem.
I thought that was understood all along, because the whole problem...
Not from the Mechaber, you don't see that anywhere. He should have said that. That's a big chiluk.
Yeah. Because all along, the thing was, the reason it's a problem, it's much faster. And
right.
Seriously faster.
Right.
So you see, as long as it's still releasing its blood, it wouldn't have been a problem, but it's already so.
Right.
Now this problem starts.
Right.
So now I have a case where where the fish is just going to be salted now after it's already absorbed the blood. Then I have the same situation as though it had not finished releasing its blood yet to be. And my problem began by the Mechaber also once it had already concluded the process of releasing its blood. That was the understanding. Why is it a problem? Because fish releases its blood so fast. So the chayra, but as long as it hasn't finished releasing its blood, it's not a problem. It's only once it stopped. That's what's the speed. Then it will be in a situation where it no longer has blood to release. Now it's capable of absorbing.
So you're asking, in other words, how does it?
Really
why? No. The Mechaber says the fisha dogim poldim kol tzirim kodim sheiflot ha'oif.
There you go. So as long
as the Mechaber said.
So as long as they're still releasing, it's not a problem because they're fast releasing. So which means that they'll stop releasing it, whereas the chicken is still released. So now they'll be in a situation where they're absorbing for the chicken because there's nothing coming out of them anymore.
Right. So what is the Ramah saying now?
So it's the exact same thing, like the Ramah here.
No. So but the Ramah says no. The Ramah says that that's only if they, quoting his language, Hainu dafka shadak pola kvar domo v'hudach, right? But imadayin lo pola domo at all.
Yeah.
He wants to be matir.
Yeah. So the Mechaber
doesn't say that.
The Mechaber only says it's a problem once he's already finishing his blood.
No.
It's
not so clear.
That's what you just quoted.
It's not so clear. No, the Mechaber just says the reason why it's not possible is because when you put the two together, the fish will be done before the chicken.
And as long as it's not done, would it have been a problem? If you take it out before it's done? According to the Mechaber. The problem is because it's going to be done so much faster.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you take it out before it's done, it's still releasing blood. You started salting them together, you took it out while it was still releasing blood. It's gone. According to the Mechaber.
No.
Ah.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Yeah, but obviously it's going to be a few minutes. It doesn't say how many minutes
they both agree
here.
on the principle that while the fish is still releasing blood, it's not a
Right,
problem.
that they appear
When
to
does
be
it become a
agreeing on.
problem?
Right.
Once the fish stops releasing blood. Now, the Mechaber had a situation that was talking about the situation all the time when
Yeah.
the fish already stopped releasing blood because it was so fast.
Right.
The Ramah is now talking about the situation where you're just bringing
You
the
could
fish
you could
down.
you can make that
So by him, the situation is such that it's now going to release its blood.
you can make that argument, but
No,
Poshub
but
Shot.
was saying it even started to.
Yeah.
But now it is because now it's being salted.
Yeah.
So once it's being salted, it releases its blood together with the blood that it's absorbing.
No,
Yeah.
the blood is had already absorbed previously.
Not previously.
I
Yeah.
understood
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
this is an unsalted fish
Right.
that fell into
Sure. Not fell. Fell. You're talking salted together. You're talking about.
salted that went in
Ramah.
salted
Okay.
The more the new case, the last case.
Yes.
salted fish go falling in, going into unsalted fish, salted chicken.
Yeah.
The fish never started to go.
Right.
Exactly. So now it's going to be salted. It's going to give up what it absorbed.
Later, the fish is going to be salted. Not necessarily the same. And then it's going to everything. That's how I understood what you're saying.
And
Yes.
that's what you're saying.
Actually, what you're saying makes sense. In other words, otherwise, no. I think what you're saying helps to understand the Rama a little bit better. It's not that they're being salted at the same time. Otherwise, why doesn't he comment on Mechaber in the beginning? No. What do you mean they? If you have never salted this fish, they're being salted at the same time. It's okay. Okay.
Now the fish is salted.
Right. But it's going to be done with. The fish is going to be done with before the chicken is over with. But what you said is very good. I think what you're saying really makes all of the difference here. What the Ramah is saying, but this is only with fish that was already salted.
Right.
But if you bring a fish that was not salted yet, okay, and it absorbs, okay, from the blood of the chicken, and then you take it away and you salt it separately,
Yes.
then that's not going to be a problem.
But it's not,
You
it's
hear?
not a condition. Separately, it's not a condition.
No. It has to be the way he is
No,
explaining
the Ramah
it.
is not saying a condition separately.
No, but it has to
Look
be
at the
that
Lashon
way.
of the Ramah.
It has to be that way.
It's not the Ramah. Look at the Lashon.
All right. He's saying like this. V'hod amrinu di madak tofel v'oifes meluchim masurim hainu dafka shadak polat kvar domoy. It already was right. Polat kvar. Right, domoy. Right.
That's his condition.
That could be after 5-10 minutes.
It could
Okay,
be.
when it was all being salted together. Aval im adayin lo polat domoy. But if this is a fish,
finished releasing its blood yet?
if this is a fish that was not poilet its dam yet,
Yet.
v'lo nimlach me'olam. Oh, 1 second. V'lo nimlach me'olam.
Wasn't.
It was never salted. Mutter. Why is it mutter? The agav, somehow later on,
No, it says later on.
I'm saying,
Okay.
the agav, the yiflot dam the day when it will be mafrit its dam, yiflot gam ken adam shebelo. If was,
At the time it releases its blood, it will also release the
but
blood
not
from
when
the-
it's sitting next to chicken still.
It doesn't say that.
Well, it has to be that.
How can it do that? Because the chicken is still giving.
No, the chicken finished giving up its
Oh.
blood. Now the fish is being put there with
Also-
being
So
salted.
you change the case altogether.
No, so you're saying that it's next to the chickens, but you're saying the chicken finished giving off?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
No, it's not what
Or it's not, it doesn't even have to finish. It can still
No, I'll
be
tell
given
you-
up.
I'll tell
as
you.
long as the fish has not given up its blood yet, it won't absorb.
No, I'll tell you why he's right. Because there's
It's not a question of he's right or he's not right.
All right.
He is a sub-case of the overall case, but the case is not reduced.
No, the reason why this is pretty much on the button is because the whole machlokes here on what the Ramah is saying has to do with this fact. Can I take now a piece of fish that absorbed blood and take out that blood with melicha to the fish? I know I can do that according to some opinions on a piece of chicken, right? That absorbed someone else's blood. After all its blood came out, I can resalt it. Remember that? Remember I can resalt it. Remember I can resalt the chicken to take up new blood. Can I right now salt the fish to extract chicken blood? Not just fish blood, chicken blood. Can I do that right now? That's the
what
question.
the Ramah is talking about.
That's the question.
That's not what the Ramah
No,
is
but
talking
that's
about. The
yeah,
Ramah is talking
yeah.
about a more general case that includes your case. But the Ramah is when the fish had already released all their blood, right?
Anyway, let's first see the Taz. What does the Taz have to say on this? The Taz says it's usher for several reasons. The first reason I'm not sure I understood well, but he quotes the Prisha. Dagim have a shem heter. They're mutter. Fish is mutter. Once once they receive dam, which is asr, how can we make him mutar? That's the prisha.
That's an Isser Balua.
Yeah, he's saying in B'Shem Brisha. Whereas with chicken that has not been salted yet, well, it's asr. It has not been salted. It has its own blood. So eventually, you got blood. Okay, eventually, when I take out its blood, all the blood will come out. That's the prisha. Interesting. All right. He calls dag b'shem heter. It's mutter. It's absorbing isser. How could we make it mutter again?
The fish was never Asr. It's an Isser Balua.
Right.
And if I can remove the Isser only the Chanan, he must hold the Chanan.
Something like that. Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. How will we make this heter that became asr heter again? All right. But as opposed to chicken. Now, but the marshal, he brings out the marshal, which is the important point over here, is that dam dogim is not really dam, it's just seer. So marshal wants to say, we don't say when it releases its own seer, can also release dam that it absorbed. Who's to say that it can do that? The Megodim says we don't hold like that marshal. We do hold that seer coming out of fish does have some koach to repel at least the dam, but the marshal wanted to say, this is an important point, that the dam of fish is really not dam. We know that it's not dam. It's a different kind of thing called seer, and that seer does not have the koach to take out any blood that is eventually absorbed.
But the first point that the Taz makes cannot apply to the Mechaber. The Taz says, how can you say that how can the Mechaber permit it after all the fish became Asr? Because it absorbed the blood of the chicken in the first step. Yeah?
Anyway, but let me just finish. The Taz himself holds a different explanation altogether. The reason why he answers, he doesn't go like that at all. He says because the dam there is dam, he says, in the fish, but it's so little that by the time it all comes out, there's still the dam of ofot coming in. In other words, it's not sufficient.
So to come back, but what the Taz says with the Mechaber, right?
Yeah, but before you go on with the Taz, the Shach says that you can rely on the Ramah Mokom Hefsem Meruba. Same thing with the Chochmas Hodom. The Yad Yehuda, I think requires it to make Melicha of the fish and take off a klipa. But what's interesting is what comes out from this is that if the fish would have had scales, according to the Taz, you definitely have a benefit, because what did the Taz tell us before? He held that the scales act as a barrier to make the release of the tzir come out slower. So having scales on such fish would be beneficial. Whereas the Shach, I think the Shach, the Prichodosh, the Marshal, they say that Melicha would not help here. The Shach says also that the Mechaber also would not agree with this Ramah.
What does the quantity of the volume of blood in the fish have to do with it?
Are you asking from some source?
Regarding this Taz.
That what? Yeah.
Regarding the Taz on it. We just said that the Taz, the fish has very
his
little
own,
blood.
very little blood. So by the time, he goes on with the explanation that by the time there is blood, not like the marshal, but it's so little that by the time it finishes emitting its blood, it cannot hold back the dam that's being absorbed from the chicken. So it does not have the koch to defend itself. So it's a big chiddush, this Ramah. The Ramah is saying that he's basically applying the concept of salting that you can resalt a chicken to resalt a piece of fish. That when it takes out its own, it will take out everything else, which is a big chiddush over here. Will that work? So the question is, why shouldn't it work? Well, we don't know. Does it work with fish in the same way it works with chicken? It's a question of metzias. But that's really the crux of the question is, can that be applied? Can we do that to the fish? In other words, that's the essence of the question. Can you do it? There was an halacha that we discussed last time, and that was a chaticha that was salted twice.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's saying that can we take out the blood? Take out the blood.
After if somehow you can get this fish that was never salted and it contains all its seer within it, to be salted,
Right. So we just that if something still has seer hours, because
right,
if a piece of meat
sure,
falls into seer, as long as 12 hours didn't pass, it will take out that blood, that seer that it will.
Right.
there's 12 hours left seared.
At least 12 hours, yeah.
Does that apply? That applies to meat, fish.
No.
Right.
No, everybody says fish gives that out pretty
Right.
quickly.
It's not 12 hours.
No, it's a few minutes probably.
So how does the Ramah, whereas in the Hefsed Gadol, he allows the meat.
No, but that's why what Jordan was saying is an important point. That was very important. I didn't catch it at first. Was that it must be talking about that you took this fish away from chicken that's still giving out. It's not where the chicken is. Otherwise, that's the case of the mechaber. They're all being salted together. You can bring new fish, and the chicken will still be going on. You can bring 3 rounds of fish probably, and you'll be done before the chicken is done, right? So it must be like you said that you took this fish that was never salted and it absorbed. It was by mistake left and it absorbed. Okay, go ahead and salt it now. Get out all that blood. It's a chiddush.
But it was the salt.
But why is it a chiddush? It's a chiddush that you can actually. Where's the chiddush here? The chiddush here is really in the fact that you can apply salt to fish in the same way that you can to chicken, and take out chicken blood only because sear is coming out. Yeah, and that sear, when it's coming out for the next 5-8 minutes, will take out any blood that may have been absorbed there. Interesting. I mean, it's not completely far-fetched. I mean, all it's saying is that the application of salt to the fish will work similarly to extract anything that got in there, as opposed to kavush. Remember, kavush and bishul, once they absorb something, you can't take it out with melicha. Remember that? That's something else. But something that was never salted, it's a fish. So what? Apparently salt is powerful enough to take it out. So he was saying that. Obviously, if you do it at the same time, you're going to be done with the fish before you're done with the chicken. The Ramah didn't say anything about that. He agreed. He actually said, "V'yesh oisrim kol hadagim." So all of a sudden here, he says, "Whoa, wait a minute. If you never did it, but what do you mean you never did it? Yeah, you never did it, and now you're going to take it and do it somewhere else, where there's no more chicken or meat next to it, obviously." That's what you need to say. But that other halacha that perhaps also sheds a little bit of light into this svara is what we covered last time in the Ramah. Legabe chaticha shemolach oiso beis pe'omim muteres v'lo chashinu shemelech hasheni mavli ha'adam hanisha mimelicha rishona. You salted a piece of meat twice. We're not concerned that the second salt will be mavliya, the dam that remained from the first melicha. So on that we had a mahari that says that basically that's the svara of the Rosh, that the teva of melech is to take out and not to take in. Then you can say that very simply. Melech will take out and will not be mavliya inside. Or you can say pashut, the chaticha is still emitting its own blood, and it will not. It's being poilet and it will not absorb. But the shach is choylek, I think. No, the shach is not choylek. The shach just says, don't make the mistake of thinking that earlier in the beginning of Ilchas Melicha, where we talk about Basar shelo hudach be'adocha rishoina, is going to pose a problem if you apply salt to it, because that's the problem over there without adocha rishoina. Remember, is dam be'ein. Oh, because over there we do see that the Melicha is taking the dam and putting it inside. Remember that? If you didn't do adocha rishoina, so don't make a mistake. Over there, it's dam be'ein that the melech can be mavliya inside, according to. Here we're just saying that don't think that the second melicha, which was a mistake, without doing adocha, but you did it anyway, will be mavliya. No, not necessarily. Either because, like the Rosh, melech is basically only has the craft to take out, not to take in. It's an important svara, only to take out, not to take in. Or that anyway, this piece of meat or chicken is still emitting its own blood or tzir, so it will not be boileya from the new salt that is being applied above the old salt. But anyway, just to finish up with the Ramah here, he says about meliach keroteach. What does that mean? We hold that even if it was only nimlach kemelichas sli, it's already roseach enough for the tzir at least to be called roseach. Pri Megadim explains that if it's not a makom hefsed meruba, even the basar is roseach if you just put a little bit of salt. So when the Ramah says eize melicha amrino dehave keroseach, he means, we're machmer. If it's not a hefsed meruba, even a little bit of salt can pose a problem and to be considered that piece of beer there. Lemaisa, what we hold is that even if it's a hefsed meruba that's here, is always reseach. The tzir is roseach. But the question is about, is the basar roseach enough? Well, if it's only a little bit of salt, it's not. Unless it's melichas gedeira, if it was actually salted a lot. But the tzir, he says, is always nechshav b'tzech af b'mokom hefsed meruba. Tzir is always going to be very salty, very, very salty, and therefore the tzir we're always going to be machmir, that if it flows and touches, it's reteach enough to pose a problem, depending on what the situation is. But we want to know what happens with the basar itself when it comes in contact. The basar itself, having been salted, is also reseach. Does that transmit any of its tam or any of its, is anything mefapea? So then it can make a difference if it's very, very salty or just a little bit of salt. Sometimes we're makel on that. That's what it means towards the end. What constitutes meliach kereteach? We need to know that. A little bit of salt or a lot. Usually it's a lot of salt, but many, many times we're going to be machmir even if it's melicha just for tzli, which is a little bit of salt. All right, I think we'll stop here. Hashem will continue next time with Sif Gimel.